All right. How's everybody doing? That was a really good video. I really appreciate one of the slogans that we have in our nationwide movement, which is Heal America, right? Heal America. I think that's such a beautiful and poignant slogan. I mean, we talked about it last week where actually America does need healing. So we all know the common advice is to, love your enemies, love your neighbor as yourself. But we throw that out the window if you voted for the person I didn't vote for. We throw that out the window. Brings out the nastiest side of people sometimes. And so we talked a lot about that last week, how we essentially belittle our political opponent. Anybody who voted for the wrong person, they've become belittled, they've become insignificant, and they've become a voice that doesn't deserve to be heard. And, one of the things I feel like I can do or I can focus on is trying to connect back to God. Connect everything back to God. Build a relationship to God. That's kind of, I feel like, a goal of a church community, that everybody develops a relationship to God. And so how are we going to develop a relationship to God if we are giving ourselves free license to just put certain people in the garbage can because they don't agree with us, that their voice doesn't count? And so I found some stuff in Scripture, and I found some thoughts during my own reflection about how the Bible and others teach us that this is blatantly not true, that nobody is too insignificant or too small to have their voice heard, or their opinion is valid in that they have a right to that thought or that opinion. And anyway, I just wanted to say I had a good week in California. I feel rested. I feel back. I brought my wife back. She's right here. And baby. Brought 2 people back. Yes. Thank you. So maybe my mind is on small, because I'm thinking, how small? Getting bigger, though. We want a relationship with God, and a lot of times we feel like, oh, God, bring your presence in my life. If you're looking for God and you can't see God right away, is it more likely that he is far away, or is it more likely that he's right there and you just can't see him? Right there and can't see him. So the title of the sermon today, I'm doing the title right up front just for Sarah, because she's always she's like, what was the title of your sermon? And I never know what it is afterwards. Testing everyone's patience. Title of the sermon today is, what if that's God in disguise? What if it's God in disguise? A lot of times you don't know what you're dealing with until way after the fact. Isn't that true? I've had some funny stories, and I'll tell a few of them to you. I met a guy in a parking lot right over here at Home Depot, and he said, hey, can you help me with my car? And I'm like, no, but I can take a look at it and call somebody that can help you with your car. He's like, no, I mean sell my car. And I sit on the, in a 90, I don't know, it was hot. It was midsummer. I'm sitting there, we're both sweating, and I'm helping him put his car on Craigslist or OfferUp on his phone, which is like slow. It's like 5 generations old. And he's like, what do you think about this ad? And he shows it to me, and it says, red truck for sale, call. I said, you might want to tell him that it's running. Is it running? He's like, yeah, it runs great. What do you mean, is it running? I said, well, put that in the ad. I said, with all due respect, but you got to tell people if it's running. I would want to know. And then I start looking at it, and it says red is misspelled. It's just RD. I'm like, who is this guy? So I went back into his phone. I fixed the spelling. I put the thing in there, and it took like 20 minutes to upload or whatever. Pictures. He's like, let me add a picture. That took, another 10 minutes. And then afterwards, I said, hey, good luck with that. And then I'm getting in my car, which was right next to his, And then he looks at me with this, he said, you know, I do a lot of spiritual work. I said, well, you're a great person. I'm sure that's a good thing, you know. That's great. And he's like, and you're an angel. I'm not making this up. And he had this weird smile. It was a good smile, but it was like straight out of a Hollywood movie. It was so strange. I kind of expected to like turn around and see him disappear, and a leaf would just be falling in the wind in his place. It felt like a movie scene. So I felt like that was so cool because this guy was willing to, even though it might have sounded funny in a Home Depot parking lot, he was willing to label or identify, hey, this is some kind of divine encounter. You're special. Isn't that awesome? Yes. This is a divine encounter right now. Right now, this is not a chance meeting. I thought that was really cool. And this guy had an amazing energy. I think I might be able to track him down with the ad, actually. Maybe, I don't know if he sold the truck. Really good guy. So I was thinking about this, how the littlest things, the littlest encounter can lead, can later on, you know, it stays with you. You look back and you see how important, how divine that little instance was. Another story that came to my mind while I'm thinking of this is I'm doing a service, maybe it was a concert somewhere for our Love and Life service, and my bandmate said, you know, my sister, I think it was her sister, or no, it wasn't her sister, it was her best friend. She said, my best friend in Washington just got engaged to a guy, and the guy wanted to check out her church. She's born in our church, second generation. He wanted to come check out the church and see what it was about. And then he came to a service and saw the Love and Life stage, and he goes, oh my God, that's my guitar teacher from 15 years ago. And I was like, are you kidding me? So they sent me, we were laughing about it, they sent me the picture of the guy. I had given him lessons when he was like 11 years old. And in California, but we're talking about Washington State. So he meets a second generation, they got engaged, I think they got married. And actually, I remember him being a little difficult, to be honest. They were asking, do you remember him? Do you remember him? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Yeah, he good kid. I mean, at that age, you know, it was fine. But we won't go into that. But, you know, he ended up coming back into my radar. Isn't that weird? And so I was thinking, as a teacher, I was like, okay, here he comes for his another lesson. He probably didn't practice. Okay, you know, it's another day, another dollar. But then that encounter turns into part of his love story. That's part of it now. It's like, you know, I'm coming into this marriage or this family and their church. I want to learn about it. And there's my guitar teacher, like a little signal. Hey, friendly territory. Isn't that interesting? So I had no idea the kind of impact that I would have on just one of my hundreds of students. You don't know the kind of impact you have on one of the hundreds of people you might meet this year or this week. You don't know. You know, we think, this is something interesting. I feel like we don't feel like we can have impact unless we're billionaires. We don't feel like we have any influence, any impact or anything unless we're making millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And then when I can buy my parents a house and all my friends a house, then I'm making a difference. And that's simply not true. That is simply not true. We have impact and we have divine meetings all the time. All the time. Actually, you never know when you have an angelic type or a divine type encounter. You know, I'll tell you a third story, kind of an example of small things adding up to a big impact. My sister, who I just hung out with for the week, is about to get her master's degree from a very boutique-y niche art school. She's very hard to get into. And now she's being eyed and looked at by the big-time Ivy League schools. And she might go all the way. And you know, 8 years ago, I would have never told you this could happen. I always saw Jamie as, well, somebody who might start a business from home, or who knows, maybe she'll be that or this. And she always told me, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what she told me. And that was kind of her plan. But then what happened? She got married to this wonderful brother. And from the very get-go, from first time I met him, he said, Joe, your sister is brilliant. Ganesh says that all the time, right? Your sister is brilliant. And I'm like, really? No offense. I mean, but yeah, it's true. I know that she's well-read. She's more well-read than me. And I'm a closet well-read. She's well-read. She's well-spoken. She's artistic. She's more artistic than 99% of the musicians I know. They think they're artistic, but she's real. She's the real deal. But I never saw her as professorial or highfalutin in any way. In fact, she declared that she didn't want to be that. She wanted to be very, local. But you know what? He told me and he told her probably every day, you're brilliant. He told me in the first time I met him, he said, your sister should be teaching a Harvard doctorate level program in art. He was telling me that 8 years ago, and I'm thinking, she doesn't even have her associate's degree, and she's 23 years old. What are you talking about? Didn't even have that. What are you talking about? Every time I saw Ganesh, from the last 8 years, he was saying the same thing. Jamie is so brilliant, so brilliant. And I want to encourage her. And here we are 8 years later, she's almost done with that master's, and now all those Ivy League schools want her. So that little bit of encouragement every day, huge impact, what it can do if you persist over time, telling a loved one just something small and opening their mind. What if I have the potential? What if my spouse telling me I'm brilliant is God in disguise, telling me I'm brilliant, that I should go for something? And so I want to, I don't have the PowerPoint because I didn't prepare it, but I want to share with you a little piece here. It's Matthew 25. And it's an awesome piece of scripture that I recommend everybody read. You can read it a few times, and I feel it's worth it. And this is Jesus talking about the righteous people who are sitting at the right hand of God. So then he says, then the king, and this is capital K, so this is God. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And then the righteous people answered. They answered, and they said, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or come to you? And then the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. Right? And our founder, Reverend Moon, says that very same thing in other reiterations. He says that a beggar or a homeless person is never an accident. There is no chance meeting. And he even says that if you think about it, to save a falling object, or let's say a falling child off of a bed, you have to go lower, right? You have to reach your hand lower to save. So when he saw humanity, this is a paraphrase from Reverend Moon, when he saw humanity sinking to the brink of death, he went lower and sent Jesus to die. Jesus died. His son died. So in that sense, you have to kind of go lower. God is going lower than you really know. And so he says, whenever you see a homeless person or a beggar or anybody or someone in prison, imagine that's your Father. And we have that right here in the Bible too. The least of these. And I want to point out something. These are the righteous. This is God talking to the righteous people who already did these things. They said, when did we do all these things? And he said, you've already done them. When you were doing them to the prisoner and to the sick person, you were doing it to me. This is past tense. And notice how the righteous people were unaware. They didn't realize they were doing these things to God directly. They were doing those things to people. But then God came and clarified, no, you are also doing them to me directly. Which is why I want to say, maybe that guy in the Home Depot parking lot, huh? Maybe I helped God put a Craigslist ad up. I mean, if that's my legacy. And I was thinking, if you saw every encounter this way, you wouldn't belittle it so much. If some guy asks you for 50 cents and you just throw the 50 cents in, it feels like, I guess that was no big deal, And it's kind of a reverse arrogance almost, like, it's not a big deal. Or, oh, that was nothing. I know I talk to some people and I say, you're really good. You helped that guy up the stairs. And he's like, yeah, that's nothing. We don't want to belittle these little things. The belittling acts of kindness is not the right attitude. Any act of kindness can be an act of kindness to God. I was thinking about this. What gives it meaning is the person involved in the receiving end. So if I told you this clicker was held by Tom Cruise, you might say, whoa, okay, let's wash this thing and frame it. If I said this pen was used when, on Brad Pitt's, one of his marriage certificates to Jennifer Aniston, you would treat it differently than just any other pen. You really would. I guarantee I would too. I'm guilty of it. If the person is famous, so my sister was saying, telling me this study she saw where this guy paid a lot of money to buy a shirt that Jerry Seinfeld wore. So they realized, they were asking the guy, well, what, other than that, if he didn't wear it, would you have paid the same amount? He's like, no. And then they said, well, how do you know Jerry Seinfeld really wore it? She's like, well, that's what the person said. They said they can prove it or something. So really what made it valuable to that person at the time of the purchase was the knowledge that Jerry Seinfeld wore the shirt. Based on only the knowledge that he wore the shirt, did it become valuable. Isn't that strange? That's how this works. The knowledge that the person right in front of you is God, or is God in disguise, let's say, makes that interaction divine and important now. If you lose that perspective, it can become unimportant and meaningless. So, I've done a lot of touring in the music world, and it's so funny how people treat famous musicians. They come up to me and say, yeah, I had like a 30-second conversation with Bon Jovi, and it was amazing. They think it's amazing to have more than a 2-second conversation with somebody famous. So if that's how we're treating somebody famous, then what about how we treat God? That should be a couple notches up, I'd say. Couple notches. So a lot of times we're looking for God, and he's right under the surface. So I would like to kind of implore or to challenge you all to look at your little situations going through life this week, that any encounter you might have, it could be God in disguise. And don't be afraid to declare it in the present or even in the future. Instead of looking back and going, oh, I guess that fella back there a couple years ago, ever since I met him and he introduced me to somebody, oh, I guess that was a divine turning point in my life. It's always in hindsight, so you're never appreciating life as you go along. So we can declare and kind of put our mindset towards this year is going to be a divine year for me. I'm going to meet the right people. I'm going to be looking for ways that I can see the God in disguise and connect to each person as my Father. And that's a whole different heart and a whole different lens that we can look through life. And let's not forget, we can always loop that back to, I think this is an important cause right now, because as we head up to these midterm elections, we're going to start seeing the mud fly. You're going to see insults and things you've never seen before. It's going to be a very intense, and I think it could even be spiritual, right? We're going up to 2020. And, you know, as our movement is ramping up to 2020 to make this declaration of peace on earth and blessing all the 7 billion people, so is the forces of evil. If we're ramping up, so are the forces of evil. Is that right? I'll paraphrase a quick Bible story where they said that a guy is trying to grow a crop, but an enemy farmer came by and threw, what are those things? What's that? Weeds, right? He threw weeds into the seeds. You guys might know this story. Threw weeds in the seeds. And so the farmer has no idea what to do. Well, how do I get the weeds separated from my actual crop? And then the advice that he came upon was, you have to let them both grow out fully. You have to let them both grow out fully so that you can separate the weed from the real crop. You can't do it too early or you'll yank out the whole crop. So something that's been hitting me in my reflection is that we're in that time now where the forces of evil and the forces of good and godliness are both ramping up to their fullest. They've both been growing to their fullest potential. And I was thinking that we are probably going to see the greatest acts of good we've ever seen very soon. That's my opinion. And the counterpart as well. So I would love for our community to be a bastion, a beacon of treating others with respect, living for the sake of others, seeing God in people, even as small or as insignificant in your life as you might think it. Let's amplify the respect and the service to everyone that crosses our path this week. Thank you very much.